Welcome, everybody, to Data to Dollars, our roundtable on improving revenue. This is for our audience, which are interested in scaling their organizations. They're typically 30 million plus in size, can be 20 million as well. This particular roundtable, we invite revenue experts from all over, and we talk about some important aspects, some important topics, data to dollars topics, which helps you close more, drive more revenue, be more efficient, and so on. So today's topic is how to improve close one ratio and time to close. I'm sure this is very, very important for all of you in your sales role, or as CEO, you are looking to get more out of your incoming leads. You're looking to close more of them and close them faster. So that's the topic today. Before I introduce, or I have amazing speakers today with me on this roundtable. But before we go into that, briefly on Aryng, we are experts in data to dollars. We mostly work with scale-up organizations, 30 million plus in fintech, SaaS. We also work with consumer apps, a bit in e-commerce and manufacturing. Let's hear from our speakers. I want to welcome Stephen Bowen, Cory Cox, and James Watson here.
I run a little consulting service called BDAAS.PRO, and our primary value driver / value proposition is we act as kind of an embedded SDR service that's overseen or run by a CRO level person to really kind of fix the gaps in terms of top of funnel to bottom of funnel conversion. So we embed with the client and we help them. So that's basically what we do in a nutshell.
Thanks for the invitation, Bianca. Good to be with you all. I'm Cory R. Cox. If you're trying to find me, that middle initial will help, of Business Propulsion Partners. I'm known, though, for helping folks figure out how to grow better for as long as they want, generally when their businesses are in the 1 million to 350 million ARR range. I offer broad capabilities for owners and boards and offer growth strategy advisory and execution.
Yeah, okay, thank you for having me. James Watson, and I am a fractional VP of sales. I'm based out of Redondo Beach, California. I'm part of a larger organization that I'm licensed with called Sales Acceleration. So it's kind of, I have my own company, but I have that corporate umbrella with all the support, strategic alliances, and productivity partners and assets that, help to run and processes that help to run the business. And essentially $5 million and up technology companies looking to catapult their sales, scale their sales and profits by working with me.
That's great. Thank you so much for the introduction, James, and welcome you all. My background, real quick, I have 20 plus years of experience in analytics, math, statistics, data science, AI, whatever you want to call it, today's flavor. So whether we are doing large-scale data literacy for enterprise clients, Fortune 1000 that you've heard of, or when we are working with scale-up clients, what we are focused on data to dollars. How do we get to that data from data to dollars in the fastest possible manner? Let's talk about today's topic. How can we improve our close one ratio and time to close? So before we get into how do we improve, I think the first question for me from all of you guys experts, I would like to understand, how do we diagnose? So let's diagnose the sales process bottlenecks first. I would love to invite you, James. I would love to understand what are the common hurdles you see affecting the close one ratio in all things digital, in the digital world?
Yeah, well, I think there are a few key areas, and one that I'll mention that's outside of those three key areas is personnel. Either making sure you have the right person or people in the right seat, and sometimes you'll have the right person, but they need to be trained. And they need to have processes in place. And in the instance of sales, it's a sales playbook, and then getting up to speed on that. If I'm going through, the three key areas that I kind of thought about that would help out for the close ratios, the first one is research, and it's something that a lot of sales reps don't do. Depending on who's in that seat, and it can really vary. If it's a transactional type of a product or service that's being sold, then a little bit of research still should be done before making a call or sending an email, whatever it's going to be. If it's an enterprise type of an opportunity, then a significant amount of research and profiling should be done once one has decided that that is a viable target. And normally there are going to be less of those targets, and it really should be very focused. Part of that also is, and what I work on with companies when I'm doing engagements, and a lot of them really, the reps really neglect this, is their LinkedIn profiles, and making sure that their headline is succinct and that it carries the right message, and that they're posting regularly, they're connecting with the right people, and then liking their posts, commenting on them, and then reposting and tagging those people, because that's a good way also to not only become a thought leader on LinkedIn, but also to kind of endear yourself to the people that you're trying to target.
So James, I'm just going to double click it just because I want to understand this deeper, also for the audience. So what I'm hearing from you is that, what affects the close one ratios as aggregate when you look at what helps you close a deal is knowing and developing a relationship with that person you're trying to sell to. Is that what you're getting to?
Yeah, that's correct. And then also knowing about, their company and what they do. And then, you're not going to try to find their pain points or their gaps right away. You're first trying to establish the connection and the relationship, but then the next step is doing assessments and identifying, the gaps in their current sales processes. And that actually brings me to the second point, which is qualifying. Every rep should have qualifying forms. And it's actually best if they're printed out. And when I was running teams with multiple different types of reps, some being transactional, some being specialists, there are different types of qualifying forms. There's some questions that need to always be asked, timeline, budget, who are the decision makers. Is there going to be a committee involved in the deal? There's a lot more questions, but there's some baseline questions, but then it gets deeper and deeper when you're getting into targeting a specialty where you need to uncover the information that you're going to need then to make your pitch or your presentation, however that's going to go. And then, so these qualifying forms really should have the end game is to come up with 3 value propositions, and it's not the company's your own value propositions. You need to know that, but that really, you've either already talked about it to get the meeting, or you're going to use it later on once you've identified what their top 3 value props are. It might be more, it might be 2, but typically one goes for 3. It's a Steve Jobs rule of 3, which is how he presented. But once you identify those, then it allows you to shape the presentation. You might have some canned things that you do, but then you need to set up an agenda. You need to go review what were those key points, make sure that you have the buy-in and validation of the person you talk to, and then find out if there are new people in the room. Maybe they've got their, you were talking to a VP and then the CEO goes, or one founder, and then another founder comes in, then you can ask them, does this align with, what is important to you? Do you have anything to add? And then you kind of have to think on your feet, because you've got your presentation that you're prepared for that one person maybe, but now you got several others in the room, and then you have to be able to speak to them. And then you start bringing in your value props.
So James, I'm going to ask you to pause for a few minutes, and I'm going to come back to you, to your process. But let me ask, Stephen, do you want to weigh in? And again, you don't need to tee off of James, but like, how do you look at the hurdles when you go into the organization and you're like, oh, clearly you're not closing it more because of, because of this and this and this reason?
Well, we see it all the time. We see a lot of breakdowns in terms of funnel process. especially at just, and the dynamic here, you kind of have a different dynamic as to whether it's an inbound lead or an outbound lead. So, and then you've got enterprise versus some SMB versus sub-enterprise versus startup. So those dynamics are in play. So on my end, I've done both. I've done all of it, big corporate enterprise and smaller startup stuff. But I mean, typically I see the same problems. It's just a breakdown in terms of who's doing what in the funnel. SDRs are and then you have to manage the process of the handoff between marketing and sales. That's almost always broken. I see it all the time where they don't.
Would you say that's your number one, where you see most of the time it's broken is between sales and marketing handoff, marketing to sales handoff?
Exactly, correct. Yes. Yeah. So I see that all the time. We see that all the time. So basically my partnership, what we do as BDAAS.PRO, we're partnered with a kind of an inbound expert marketing group, and we tag along with them. So we build the inbound and then we manage the funnel ourselves, and then kind of teach the organization, okay, this is how you nurture a lead down to conversion. Because we see that it doesn't really matter how big the organization is, because what you said fundamentally at the beginning is that there is no single source of truth for a lot of these organizations. They're all over the place. They're siloed. Their information is siloed. Sometimes the left hand doesn't understand what the right hand's doing and all that kind of stuff. But for me, I simplify it by saying it's all it all comes back to fundamentals. Once we've got a lead, it's about, okay, how do we nurture this lead? How do we score this lead? How do we make sure that, all of the steps and touch points in the funnel are making sense to get to the ultimate goal, which is to get them to the bottom and convert them.
So I heard from you, one is marketing to sales breakdown. That's what you see when you go into an organization, that transfer is not happening seamlessly. I heard from you that data access is a problem where you're not having access to the data in a way that you could use it to understand where things are breaking up. Did I get that right? Is there anything else when you go into the organization, where do you see the malfunction?
And drilling down, let's say we work with a lot of HubSpot, organizations where there is kind of a single source of truth. It tends to be knitted together very, very fluidly. And if the CRM hygiene, and all of the other elements of HubSpot that are feeding into kind of the CRM element, if the CRM hygiene is good, that tends to be a much better source of information for the sales side to work with in terms of moving, the funnel process to where it should go.
So what do you mean by hygiene? Is it the way it is instrumented? Like HubSpot is instrumented, how Salesforce is instrumented, how the sales and marketing technologies are instrumented?
It's who's looking at what data and what they're doing with that data.
Okay.
Right? So
Okay.
ultimately, from a lead generation and nurturing perspective, it always ends up going to sales. And at that point, who's taking over and what are they doing? I mean, are they putting in like specific notes? Who did I talk to? What did they say? What are the nuances and subtleties of the conversation? Am I setting up tasks for, to reconnect with that person on a certain date? Was I good enough to say, okay, that sounds great. Let's pick a date that we can, reconnect and continue the conversation, and so on and so forth. So that's what I kind of mean when I say process paired with CRM hygiene and just kind of keeping all of that sales data in a place and where it makes sense to other people that might be looking at it that are outside of the sales organization. Or if they're the ones creating it, having them make sense for this.
And there's nuance in what I've heard now from you as well as James, that is there is sort of like a checklist of things that you're doing, like next action before the closing of the meeting and so on and so forth. Is there like a global existing list of checklists that every SDR and inside sales rep needs to look at? Is there an existing giant list of?
Ideally, yes, it's optimized and it's organizational. It's typically internal, but that almost never exists. In an ideal world, that would always exist and everybody would follow that process.
Right, right. I know, Cory, you were jumping in. I want to invite you in also to kind of
trying to have a core process that works, that you can have discipline to stay to, so you can measure against it and have expectations and train to it, and then look at the next gates in the funnel process is important. I would take it back to another basic level too. What James and what Stephen talked about is spot on in Stephen's comments about understanding the data and the flow and what's in there and being valid and good, because you want to know the basics of sales process are happening. Quick response that's reasonably quick and not too quick. Follow-up is happening. Tasks for next steps are being enacted, set. Questions are being asked. So you want to see notes, you want to see robust information from that sales call, the outreach, the email, the message left. And now with AI, we have tools that help do it a little bit better, and call tracking that's been around for a while. Got to build trust. We're always creating urgency. Appropriate urgency that is in balance to what we've qualified in the discussion and the trust build and the listening with the prospect and the relationship. And then you want to maintain momentum. Deals and opportunity flow that loses momentum can be a real problem. And depending upon how the business flow is washing over the resourcing that you have, be it SDR, BDR, AE, strategic enterprise sales lead, whatever, things can start to get lost. So having that analytical framework that's constant, the dashboarding, the reporting on what needs to be seen from that funnel so it can be measured and the communications can happen around it. And then you can train to things, and doing postmortems when you get to blockages that occur. You know you have something that did not convert into an opportunity. Do we know why? Is there a way we should have done that differently and better, related to the segment of who we were talking to? Did we miss something if there was a buying committee early on? So now we've lost the person when they've left the business, and we could have been more threaded and embedded in the case of an enterprise sale or a multi-stakeholder, especially if you're doing SaaS and you're doing something that involves customer data or financial data. You've got to be checking all those boxes, and you've got to know who those players are and build it in right and early, and then have it in the CRM. Because not only if you're a revenue leader or you're a business owner, you want that opportunity flow to be nurtured, cultivated, and inured to your business, regardless of who is in the seats on your team and in the prospect team. And you want to, because you've invested all that activity, if it takes you in a sales flow on a larger deal, 100, 200, $5,000, $1 million, whatever enterprise sale deal, in a multi-year contract, 6 months to build cred and do all these different things, it turns into a 9 and 12. We see it a lot in automotive and in enterprise and large Fortune companies. All of that investment, you pay base salary, you have also long-term incentives that are flowing to the individual depending upon the level. All of that is investment, and it's basically the equivalent of CapEx, and it needs to turn into generating that return on all that invested capital. And it's by measuring all those things and doing all of those actions and then making sure it stays on the rails and is aligned, and that you learn and inform in an agile way as it goes on. Sometimes you'll encounter a deal and if something happens and that person is not the right person to move it, they've been going great, and then there's a change in personnel. Maybe you need to bring somebody else in strategically and have a partnership and handoff. You never know, but you have to look at and oversee those things and know what's happening. So then you have to have communication flows in your process with your people and how they're adhering to process, where things are out of process and why does it make sense? Okay. And what's happening on those flows, and how do we get resources applied to continue to move it through that funnel or vortex where things are going down, they spin out, they pause, they come back in, so that it gets to a conversion event that monetizes for everybody and everybody wins.
Got it. So I am taking notes here. I have 5 points from all of the things that you three talked about. My must-have, I'm already building must-have as a sales leader or as a CEO of an organization. there are must-haves. I've taken notes on these 5 things. I would love for you to add if you guys can. One is I heard from you that there must exist a CRM system which is well instrumented and has triggers in it for the next steps and so on and so forth. I also heard that there needs to be a proper go-to-market process, that you need to know like your ICP or, you know, so on and so forth, who you're talking to and why you're talking to, what's the product market fit and so on. I also heard that you need to have a qualification process or qualification criteria that you kind of train people to go through it. I also heard that you need access to integrated data to understand what's really going on. So you can then diagnose if things are not going well, where is it going wrong? And then, and I also took notes on a proper sales personnel incentive. I don't know what it's called. Incentives, incentivization.
You've got team incentives, you have commission plans, you have long-term incentives, depending upon how long you want this person to be retained and how crucial they are to your business and what's approved from board and C-suite on down. There's
a lot of people miss the mark. A lot of companies miss the mark on that pretty badly.
And then you've got shared incentives across departments and teams. You have gain sharing arrangements or otherwise structured. Is customer success involved? Are they making sure that if somebody's been sold, that there's continuing upsell? When do they bring the salesperson in? How are they incented and awarded on it? I went in once as the first guy outside the founding team C-suite to do net new business development because the company started to falter on their compound annual growth rate that they had been used to at 20% a year. So it was, what are we going to do? Write the strategy. Well, I had to do SDR to BDR to AE to the whole shooting match. And when I would land deals, I would take a portion of my commission and I would send it over to the engagement management that I would do the warm handoff to make sure that was going on. So if we were in one part of a company, right, you're always looking for that next dollar of revenue and how to serve that prospect and partner and client. Could we get into another part? And I wanted those people to feed me as they delivered that so that I could come back in and sell more, and the whole thing grew. So all of those interrelationships are important. And
so proper incentivization structure, whether it is individual, whether it is shared, whether it is cross organization, whether it is on dollar value or close or whatever aligns with what you want the individuals
to cross thread and currency on this prospect or client side is important too, because they're going to be influencers in addition to the executive sponsor, in addition to the actual technical buyer, the business operational buyer, depending upon the product or service you're selling, that are going to be very important. You could create a potential threat with like a data safeguarding analysis that your company may have some gap closure to deal with by not involving that cyber CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, early. Whereas if you listen, you understand, you ask questions, you be present, you build cred, they can become your biggest advocate.
Got it.
Where you are, what you're doing. And then if you're in a competitive situation where the business buyer or the technical buyer might be leaning another way, or they're on an RFP and they've got 3, you may have multiple components that are in your favor, moving that forward and carrying that water, for lack of a great term, inside the organization. Great book is Crossing the Chasm on unique technical sales where you're trying to market, and that stuff is super valuable.
Yep, I was going to, add on that also, or kind of ride off the coattails of Cory there. But a typical rule of thumb, and it's not absolute, but a lot of companies really stray from this or just don't understand it yet, is for an experienced salesperson, not necessarily a new hire that needs to be on a different kind of plan, is 50% base salary. And then 50% variable component. So if you're, and usually the quota, and this is loose, but the quota, it should be 10 times what their on target earnings are. So if someone has $1 million, if they're looking to achieve $1 million and they know they need one person for that, which can be another issue too, because they might be looking to achieve $2 million and then they throw it onto one person, they have to kind of reverse engineer and work it backwards. You have to help them out by looking at their metrics, a rearview mirror, which requires the CRM, how long is the closing cycle and so forth. But if they understand it and then you're building off of that $1 million, someone would have a $50,000 base, $50,000 variable component, and then there can be accelerators, when they go beyond that.
Got it. So I think you guys both are kind of incentivizing, you're bolding and capitalizing and underlining this whole incentivization structure, shared and individual.
And the common term, Bianca, he mentioned on target earnings, people will talk about it as OTE.
Yep.
Acronym, and you absolutely want to be focused on the OTE, but you got to give the salesperson enough to live off of, but you got to also have them hungry enough that they're going to actually go out and crush it, club it, hunt it down, kill it, bring it in. If it's new biz dev, net new logo, especially, and be incentive to do that.
Yeah, and a lot of companies, they focus on the gross sales, but they don't really look at the onboarding of the clients and then the maintenance, maybe a quarterly motion to take care of them so that they can earn enough credibility with that client to get upsell revenue, to get referrals, and if it's a SaaS type environment, to get critical renewals. And that can be worked into the comp plans as well.
Got it.
For value in the sales process too, depending upon how you're selling, if you understand and listen to your client and know the targets, going to contract length and term can be beneficial for them. I've seen businesses before that are doing, to James mentioned, renewals, 1 year terms, and that's their standard. Like, okay, our contract is 30, 40, 50 grand setup at 10K a month, so it's a $1.50, $1.75, whatever the number is.
That's typical SaaS. Yeah.
The deal with SaaS. And it's like, if you're selling into Fortune 50, 100 companies, that purchaser and that whole process is so burdensome for them and for you. Sell them a 3-year deal and then do a +1 auto renew at a, percentage of top line.
Yeah, we did that. We'd keep people flat, if they did a longer contract for 2 years or 3 years. And that is a good way to lock them up.
And then you've got scope triggers that you can use. So if they move outside of the scope, then they will get the value, but they have to part with some of the money in order to do it, which brings revenue to you and new business opportunities and expansion and share all it and all the rest of it. Great ways to do things. There's huge opportunity, but that communication aspect, the trust building, and I go back to basics. If you go old school automotive, and that's the industry I started in, I was on B2B OEM to dealer, client production wholesale. But the retail side, the old thing they teach you is 2 deposits, 1 withdrawal. To James's point and our other gentleman colleagues' point, you build the relationship and you establish a modicum of trust and connective tissue. So you're offering value in there. And one of the things that I did, and you wanted to talk about today or some point, to really enhance the sales process, to the extent you can do it, build return on the spend-based analyses, because sometimes your buyers are not experts at finance and budgeting. And if you can help them have that conversation about, when you make this investment, it's going to generate X dollars, 5, 8, 10, 12, 15, 20 for every dollar you spend. Here's the timeline, and here, look at that. They like, oh, wow. Oh, this could be my promotion. This could be my career move forward. The finance guys are going to love me. The boss is going to love me. The business is going to love me. They already do, but take it to the next level. Then you have an ego investment. Then they're wanting to sell. Involve them in that spreadsheet, Google Sheet, Excel doc, whatever. They're playing with the numbers, and you're feeding in insights from your other clientele that your businesses and you have sold or are selling, that help them drive the process, and then they own it. They're selling internally to their buying committee, to their stakeholders, and you are educating and delivering value in the process. And anytime you can get that going, it, generally speaking, unless there's a strategic line and you have to be patient for budgets are cut, everything's delayed, we're hunkering down, got to just take a breath and handle it. That stuff.
So I think you are double clicking on that that value proposition and kind of establishing or displaying value of your services or product, you're saying take it one level, next level up, not just, quantify it, put the return on spend and work it in an Excel sheet that they can play with. When they start playing with it, it becomes their own. And that makes it easy for them to showcase what their decision depended.
Understand the value delivering at every piece and every target, every conversation. There's promotional career path value to the individual.
Yeah.
There's industry vertical or functional discipline knowledge value to the individual if they wanted to leave their employer or wanted to move into a different arena. There's value to building connection for that person with other departments within that company and business, depending upon the size. There's value to the organization and customer benefit that will flow through, or cost efficiency, or whatever it is. And if there's value to education and business acumen build on the other side, relative to not only solution, but process and value delivery, that layers long-term. So it all connects. But yeah, and that starts with stepping back and listening and being present and just being a human and valuing the other human basics, respect, and all the rest.
Yeah, and one of the things that Cory's hitting on, which is really critical, and that I've implemented, that really ties into the close win ratio, is establishing a spreadsheet, and I've built a lot of them that are ROI calculators. You put your formulas in, and then you can go, and then when you're interviewing that person or doing discovery with that individual, and it can be either with an existing client that you're looking to upsell or cross-sell or something, or it can be during the initial sales process when you're trying to win a client. And then when they see that end number, when you do, let's say, a 5-year horizon, and I had it built to do 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year, and then you're talking like ridiculous numbers or returns on, where that penny comes back dressed as a dollar, and it's incrementally over time.
I love it. I love this. Of all the things we've talked about, this is definitely something I'm taking home with me. Question for both of you. Is there a difference in how you close or the sales process to increase the close win ratio and decrease the time to close? Is there a difference between inbound leads versus outbound reach outs, and how
you want to go, Cory? And then I'll go.
Well, we'll back and forth on this.
Okay.
Inbound, if it's based upon thought leadership content that you are putting out organically as part of your business from a marketing and go-to-market perspective, that's resonating with the target. Generally, if it's informed with buying intention signals and that's actually reality, so you're getting a third-party data append from Zoom Info or Seamless AI or whatever into the CRM, and then you're doing the outreach, and it's all hitting on all the things, and then they're or you're putting it into your web content, and you have that, and people are seeing the webinar and they're doing stuff, and then they're coming to you and they are taking the first step. They're generally hotter, because not only are they in automotive, hand raisers were people said, I want a brochure, and leads were people that said, I want to talk to a dealer now. Very different level of purchase intent and intensity. You went to an auto show, all of those people would be exploring, and they're way more upper funnel for the most part from a volume perspective. So the close rate was very much lower. Somebody walks into a dealership, they don't want to be at a dealership usually, because they're like, oh my gosh, car salesman, it's price discrimination, which is legal in the automotive, is a perfect example of it. So whatever they can make off of me, they're going to. I don't want to deal with the process. I don't want to be there for hours and sit in the financial insurance box and all the rest, do the TO from sales to sales manager. Uncle, make it stop. That person in that showroom is very serious. The person who is submitting an electronic request online and it's knowing it's going to go to a dealer is more serious than the person who's just saying, I want a brochure shipped to my house.
Yeah.
Those levels of seriousness impact conversion.
So what you're saying is know where they are in the funnel. You're just pegging them in different parts of the funnel, saying,
Sure.
The person showing up and actually
Party lead siting, you're putting SEM out there for, hey, get a quote on a car, and it's moving to joeblowsportal.com and they fill out a form. The likelihood of that converting is much less than if they're going to Kelley Blue Book to get a used car valuation because they're going to trade something in and they want to know what it's worth. They're down funnel. They're further in the process of consideration to actually buy.
Yeah,
And
I think it's also important to distinguish between B2C, business to consumer, and B2B, business to business, because to Cory's point, when he's talking about a business to consumer example there, where an individual that wants to buy a car, is coming in, you're dealing with the decision maker. Whereas if in B2B, a lot of times the leads that come in, yes, they're technically hot, but you've got someone that's been, basically it's been delegated to them to, hey, find out about this and talk to, and 3 other, companies that do the same thing. And so there, I think when it's B2B, it's being able, when people get those inbound leads or intake forms off of a website, and then they're parsed out to the rep or reps, they need to be able to quickly qualify those. And that's usually going to, it may or may not be transactional, because it could be a big company calling in, but then understanding from that person that's calling in very quickly, understanding, are they a decision maker, which a lot of times they lie about. And then you find out, you start getting through the process, and then they say, well, I've got to, we've got to go over to this. And it's like, well, so I always ask the question, who would sign on this contract?
Yeah.
Because they could say they're the decision maker, and then a lot of reps will take that and run, and they'll spend all this time with someone that really can't make a decision. They have the ability to say no, but they do not have the ability to say yes, and you don't want to be in that position.
And the
No, that
agenda motivations, depending upon where you're hitting in the org, are very different. Somebody wants to feel like they're the man or the quarterback or the lady.
Totally.
So they're going to have the conversations. It's all over the place. I used to have to do alliance sourcing committee work to figure out who we were going to get approved to do stuff at Nissan. And it was in Tennessee, and then it went to Japan and to Paris with the Renault Nissan purchasing organization. There were 16 signatures on my annual budget. There were so many people involved in that I had to get this next level to understand what's going on. I had to go to the cost cross-functional team to sell him the idea of the program to make sure he understood that it would make a good investment decision. So that checked that box off. There was cyber, there was legal, there was brand, it was all over the place. So, if you are a good salesperson, you can only take up so much monkeys off of somebody else's back. But if you can take big monkeys or things that are worry things that are going to keep them up for off of your prospect's back or mind and make it easier on them, they're going to love and eat you up all day long, and they will try to go to the mat for you. One time I was with a lady who was trying to build a new pharmacy business, kind of resuscitate and grow that, and she wasn't sure how to sell it into finance up the food chain. And having the return on spend templates and having that conversation, it dramatically reduced her time and workload on that.
So you just talked about also targeting and sort of like lead evaluation of lead, big monkey, small monkey, really evaluating who has a tighter need, really urgent need, who's not a decision maker or a signer versus gatekeeper, and whose SOW or whatever you have, that your bill would be bigger versus smaller.
And you have to know budget and timing as well.
Because timing can shift and change. Oh gosh, we got to cut this fiscal year. It's over. You got to come back in April. It's a Japanese fiscal year, and then you got to get ahead of that. And there's
one of the things also that I've seen a lot of my reps when I was managing SaaS reps is they will take what someone says. Like if they'll ask the question, will you be able to make a decision this month? And the answer is yes. And, what they're not really asking is that, they're going to get a decision, but then they'll make a decision and they'll forecast it, but then they'll get the decision. And so, yes, we're going to have it go through committee now and, for next year. And that's still 9 months out or whatever their fiscal year is. And then, you start getting your pipeline built up with those. It's a fake pipeline for the reps.
Then you do an RFP pitch, and then you win the RFP, and the business tells you have it, but they don't have authority because purchasing and procurement has to actually issue it.
And it'll sit on their desk. It could sit on their desk for months.
They have been ordered by finance to manage cash burn, so they're not going to act on anything in the near term. So then you got another 6 to 9 months coming down. Do you have that relationship with that purchasing person? without being too far of a relationship, such that you're in violation of the standards required in the RFP to continue to participate. The other piece is, do you know who you're talking to? One time I had somebody, very capable supplier when I was in an OE. I wanted to hire them, probably would have been the best business decision. For some reason, the CEO at that supplier went to a board director of the company, has a conversation, that gets back to us. So, and we're in an active RFP thing. So it's as if he's trying to influence the process. My boss is like instantly, well, I can't control this guy, and this is our thing. I was going to run it. He was going to oversee it. And then we had an executive sponsor here, and that guy, CEO, had gone so far, my boss decided we weren't going to hire them no matter what, because we couldn't control the supplier and get the supplier to deliver to us, because he had a trump card, which was the board, and we didn't want to deal with it. The guy lost the business even though his product was better. Got to know where to go, how to thread it, who, and in what context, lest you get yourself killed, especially at the enterprise level.
That's a very important point you guys are bringing about, is the humanness of it, human interplay, potentially ego interplay, and others, and conflict of interest. How in all of these situations, some of the things you brought about, and I know we are kind of coming to the close, but what about time to close? Are there one or two things that you guys do to decrease the time to close?
Well, one is doing the upfront qualifying and asking the questions and making sure that you're getting the answer from someone that can, that can give the answer. And if they need to go to someone else to do it, but getting a realistic timeline is important. But then also understanding, do they have a need right now, or are they a prospect down the line? And should they go just into your pipeline 90 days out or into next year? Or are they really someone that can buy within that timeline? And then do they have pain points? Do they have gaps? Do they have needs? Have you identified those needs? And then can you provide solutions to those needs? And then make sure you got the right audience to get it moving forward when you get that opportunity. So that's going to help control the timeline, whatever the best case timeline is. If it's transactional, it could be a week, it could be a day. If it's enterprise, it could be 6 months, a year, 2 years.
So you're really talking about upfront qualification here. Most of the things you talked about was like,
I got to research, qualification, identification of the value props, and then presenting to those with solutions from your company. It's actual solutions, and then the value props of the company.
And those qualification, to James's point, questions are super important, because sometimes even the buyers and the clients don't know that they're misleading you. For example, I went into a business once as a client side, and we were going to need to put a product information management system in with PIM to get ready to manage some stuff on an e-commerce approach. And my assumption would be that, given the size and caliber of the company, that the underlying data was all in decent enough shape such that that could be done. So you're told to go build the RFP, you do the work jobs, you have the conversations, and you get started. And the next thing you know, as you're going along, you learn that the data quality is too variable and it's not high enough, so that this thing is probably a couple of years too early, right? So drilling in with those questions, to James's point, to make sure you qualify and that you're talking to the other stakeholders that may be involved and have relationships, you understand where those are. Super important to reducing time to close. I misled a couple suppliers because I thought we had it in the bag, because I was new and I was running. I had my orders.
Yeah, got it. But let me ask you, in closing, how valuable, how much value do you guys place, or how valuable do you think is use of technology, whether it's AI or dashboards or whatever have you, use of technology towards closing? How do you use that towards improving your close win? And
so it's critical to have a CRM, which we've been talking about, but then also, to make sure that, it's, I think, what was the word, that the hygiene of the, data, And then and it's garbage in, garbage out with CRM. So then the reps or whoever's entering data, marketing, anyone that's entering data, you have to make sure they're doing it a certain way. And then you could even have triggers that don't allow you to go. If you have a 5-step close process, you can set it up so you can't go on. Someone can set that up internally. You can't go to step 3 without having done step 2. And so that's very important. And then as far as outside AI, I think there's been, a lot of people are using AI in lieu of doing the work, and that's not a good thing. And they're taking the human element out. I use AI in a couple of really good resources that take what I was doing manually and help to, streamline that and make me more productive so I can spend more time. I was doing these things anyway, but the AI is helping me to get to that point. And so I think,
you can get your first draft of something going and then massage it yourself, or you can get your points and turn it in and refine and get succinct. And it's very helpful. I would make one comment thinking about this, about you raise AI, James, and the risks of it versus moving away from being personally involved, personally understanding. When I was selling cars in the field back in the day at Ford to the dealers, we had systems that would run a sales, stock, and production rundown, and they knew all the inventory numbers and they knew everything. It would spit out, you need to sell what your requirements were to sell versus what they automatically need and stuff. And it would spit it all out and it would calculate it for you. You could walk in and do it on your own. I used to write it out by hand in a blank form. Why? Because I wanted to go through the process of understanding on every vehicle line what they actually had in stock, put it in my brain, in my hand, in my body, in my thinking, what they had coming in transit, what they had in the order bank, what was scheduled and not, what the mix was, what the product series and type and trim were, so that when I got into that wholesale meeting with that dealer and he was saying, no, I don't want to buy any, I knew I needed to sell him like 5 times what he wanted or needed, and I needed to find a happy medium above. I had the story and I had it in there and I knew how to share it and sell it.
You're also building a relationship with that individual, which separates you from a lot of your competitors.
Right. And I had enough knowledge to offer value in the conversation. You don't think you need this many Lincoln navigators? Well, from what I show, you've just retailed X, Y, and Z. Now you don't have any of this color. It's the hottest selling in the market, blah, 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 blah. And you get into that. Aren't your salespeople going to need to profit from it? Does the store need this profit? What's that going to do to your financial statement next month? And you're tying in the overall business strategy, or can, depending upon receptivity of your audience, alignment and a linkage and all of that stuff and how you communicate it. It can.
Yeah, I think that's critical what Cory is saying, because in the sales process, when you get to the point where you're not on the opposite side of the table, but you're sitting together and going in the same direction because they know that you have their best interests in mind. And then, having the ROI, having knowledge of their company, and then very importantly, just that they like it, know, like, and trust you.
Yeah. I think ultimately what I'm hearing from both of you is that use technology. You definitely need a CRM system, and you potentially need integration into your CRM system so you can see it end to end, coming from marketing all the way to close and post close, customer support and whatever else. But also in the all things shiny things, Gen AI, kind of use it as an accelerator for you instead of in lieu, because it's ultimately humans buy from another human. They don't buy from machine, and it's the trust. At least I'm talking about B2B or high.
Yeah. And be very careful. Some of the mistakes I've seen in the past. Oh, this CRM is great. It's going to do and set up all of our forward tasks and all of these follow-up things and send all of this stuff automated and blah, 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 blah. And then remind the salesperson to do X, Y, and Z. Next thing you know, if the salesperson's not actually triggering the other thing, it's telling him he's got to do all this stuff when he hasn't said that he did it, which would have caused it not to do any of it. So you end up papered with all this activity, and it's not adding value. It's actually a hindrance, and it's stuff to wade through that's impeding focus on what needs to be done. The same type of thing can happen with AI and with tool sets.
Tool is not the solution. It's the mindset, what I'm hearing from you. And I say this all the time, even in our world, that, even though people kind of talk to us and they say, hey, should we do this in AWS? Should we do this, Glue versus Airflow, whatever technology? And I'm like, really, tools are very comparable these days. Tools do not matter. And we are tool agnostic. We will do it in whatever tool you have. Or we might have some nuances, but more important is the mindset. What are you doing? How are you approaching? In our world, data to dollars, What is the problem? What are your hypotheses? It's about process versus, am I using Excel or G Sheet or Python or whatever, Power BI, whatever I'm using it to solve and manipulate my data really doesn't matter. At the end of it is the mindset of how are you going to move this process along. And it feels like, by the way, one of the most, I find sales leaders and salespeople the most data-driven folks of all the sort of, and it makes sense because you really have to look at the data to come to close it.
Well, within reason, we know it can help make us more money faster. And that's where the real power and opportunity of technology, MarTech, RevTech, sales tech, ad tech, whatever, and AI and how we can use it is. The other piece that a sales leader needs to be thinking about is how can it add value and enable the sales force and enable the marketing force and the connectivity of all the go-to-market vis-a-vis the ways you deploy capital in the business, build efficiency, and the competitive set. Because you cannot, there's a big debate going on right now at the board level down into the operational level on how fast should we adopt AI, what should the standards be? And a lot of the boards are like, whoa, there's too much risk and there's enterprise risk. And if we do something, what they don't know is their people are already doing it. And the sales folks, to some degree, have to do it or they're going to get behind and then they're going to be uncompetitive. So it's a balancing act like everything. And
yeah, you have to embrace it, but understand that to not kind of leave all your weight on that. Just know that it is sort of like a sidekick. It's a sales sidekick or everybody's sidekick versus main.
Well, AI can't build relationships until everyone becomes robots, which I don't know, that might happen.
I'm not planning on, I don't know what.
I mean, people are being, everyone's using it growing up. And so then there might come a time 20 years down the line when that becomes acceptable. But right now it's still about relationships and critical thinking. And,
yes.
That's something
that is fascinating. We're going to have one of our board friend folks start to talk about digital twins and how that works. And there are people that are actually building, theoretical relationships with AI in the dating world because they don't want to deal with real humans. And it's like, oh my gosh, my head's going to explode.
I agree, relationships are very complex. Well,
that's a whole other conversation.
Yes, we'll do another roundtable on dating and AI. Well, it's been incredibly valuable for me to learn from you guys. How do people get in touch with you?
So easy to find me. My phone number for the business is 615-2800-COX. It's a Nashville area code and then 2-800-COX, COX, which is 269. So 615-280-0269. I'm also deliver results at businesspropulsionpartners.com. Yes, I know we need shorter email addresses, so that's a whole other thing we're going to work on. And on LinkedIn, I'm Cory R. Cox, no E, C-O-R-Y. So happy to chat, and however I can be of service would be my pleasure. And James, great to know you, and Bianca.
Thanks too, Cory.
So James, how do I get in touch with you?
Thank you for teeing that up. James Watson, and if you're looking for me on LinkedIn, I'm easy to find. It's James Watson, and then just type in Sales Catapult, and you'll be able to find me. I'm very active on LinkedIn. My cell phone number is 310-488-1864, and then my email address is the letter J and Watson, WATSON @salesacceleration.com, and that's spelled SALESXCELERATION.com.
That's great. And folks who are interested in finding us, we are at Aryng, ARYNG.com, and you'll find your way to me if I'm the right person for you to talk. And once again, a quick reminder for those of you who are struggling with getting easy access to your sales performance dashboard, sales and marketing dashboard, and so on. If you don't have easy access to your data, and you're scratching your head and saying, where is the problem? Take advantage of our complimentary tech assessment, health tech assessment that we are doing only for this next month. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.